Oh, you kids bug me.
Remember Steve Smith and David Warner and their earth-shattering strategy to win at cricket by scuffing the ball? Well, the sport-loving city-state of Victoria now has a new rising star to shoot down. Jaidyn Stephenson is full forward for the Collingwood Magpies. Objectively one of the best teams in the 2019 AFL, and in true Collingwood fashion, his off-field behaviour has brought the 2018 NAB Rising Star crashing back to earth, at least until the finals this year. As Steve-O explained to the media after the 22-week suspension and $20,000 fine were announced, he was chilling on the couch with his mates using one of the dime a dozen live betting apps that these days account for every second sponsor. Which all sounds innocent enough, but it later emerged he bet on 3 AFL games, including the round 9 match against St Kilda, where the second-year player booted this masterpiece.
Stephenson with the barrel, he's gone to it, that's gone 80!
An 80-metre torpedo goal from the centre square with just a couple of minutes left. It was his third goal for the match, in which he'd bet on himself to score 3 goals. Teammates, coach and media laid their adoration at his feet, and the very next day he fessed up. There'll be a shadow hanging over many of his early best performances now, likely for the rest of his career, but a 22-week suspension for having a bet? It's far and away the harshest penalty ever handed down by the AFL for a gambling offence, and for pretty good reason. He bet on teammates to score goals, get possessions, and win matches in so-called multi-bets that we now know were worth just $36. For a player who'll be offered up to $500,000 next season, his motivations were very obviously not financial. Now, I'm sure I don't need to explain this, but gambling on a sport you have the capacity to influence is a massive conflict of interest, a hair's breadth from match fixing and corruption. If it's not a direct attempt to fix the outcome of a match by betting against the favourite, then it's akin to buying shares in your own company with a sizable dose of inside knowledge. Either way, integrity compromised. This is how a $36 bet placed by someone making almost $300,000 a year could win him almost nothing but cost him nearly everything. If the integrity of the sport is threatened, the entire competition comes under a cloud, and you're no longer watching athletes compete, but a financial system dictate outcomes. Hang on a minute, you high horse puritanicals. There's more to all this than a cash flush 20-year-old budding champion who otherwise bets on nothing but the Melbourne Cup having a momentary lapse of judgment in thinking the game was really all about him. But I thought the rules for players were perfectly clear, Billy, made so multiple times during introduction to the competition and multiple times every year by the Players Association. I mean, isn't this what they talk about through draft camps and pre-season retreats? Surely some of the AFL's $10 million yearly windfall from official gambling partner BetEasy, seen here plastered all over a stadium filled with families and children, is reinvested in these education and assistance efforts, right? There it is. The league and its corporate overlords may have had no choice but to throw the book at Jaidyn, but they probably weren't expecting the incident to shine a spotlight on the sport's own relationship with Vice. Live odds updates litter the AFL's lucrative telecasts and radio plays. Bookmaking around the sport has grown into a multi-billion-dollar industry in Victoria alone, a sport within a sport. And scoreboard and fencing advertisements plug smartphone gambling apps to kids too young to even have their own bank account. So if you've been steeped in a culture like this from the moment you showed interest in the sport as a kid and have known very little else, what chance do you have after being at the elite level for most of your adult life? Look, Slim Shady dropped the bag on this. He stuffed up, there's no two ways about it. And he'll now enjoy his next 10 to 12 weeks as the new Steve Smith. The cricketer will coach him on how to earn that pay TV money to replace his match payments. He's going to know a special type of hate for his performance coaches trying to keep him fit for finals footy without playing any games for months on end. But the biggest questions going forward are for the AFL itself. The perception of the league's relationship with Vice has gotten so bad that one of the game's champions, Western Bulldogs captain Easton Wood, has publicly claimed in interviews on the subject that he'd happily see the players take a pay cut, and I quote, if that's what it's going to take to do the right thing and do what's best for the kids coming through. Do the right thing. How about that? The players know it. The league knows it. But the AFL's in a bit of a Chinese finger trap here. They can claim gambling's awesome in moderation, just like cigarettes and alcohol, in order to justify their sponsorships, but every time they do, their own reputation as a good corporate citizen, with all it does to promote women, Indigenous players, Anzac Day and all the rest, it cheapens. It's not all that different from Electronic Arts becoming a multi-billion-dollar gambling company by selling loot boxes and digital card packs to children, but publicly claiming they're just surprise mechanics. What? Everything in the corporate and political world is so fake these days, it's a wonder why they bother trying to spin this truth at all. These companies, all of them, are reaching a point where they'll have to accept that their efforts to pretend bad things are good make them the laughing stock of the world, and that if you want to sell gambling to kids, you're just another evil billion-dollar corporation, and your reputation will reflect that. I'm pretty sure the AFL doesn't want that, but greed is and always has been an extremely powerful motivator, particularly where no one person's reputation is on the line, with everyone hiding behind the brand instead. So does the AFL have the moral and financial fortitude to ditch its official gambling sponsorships the way the English Premier League and Australian cricket have? The way sports all over the world did with tobacco sponsorships in my formative years? You remember the Benson and Hedges World Cricket Series, the Winfield Cup in rugby, or my personal subliminal favourites, the Mild 7 Renault and Marlboro Ferrari Formula 1 cars? It was often claimed these sports would struggle financially without these sponsorships, but every one of them has survived and even thrived to this day. I'm no bleeding heart lefty. At the end of the day, the only person who can ever fully account for your actions is you. Whether that's eating Macca's new hotter, juicier, tastier burgers, which is also recommended by the AFL, or placing a bet. But the libertarian window through which I view these cultural events shatters when a sport's highest governing body has an official gambling partner and is dependent on money from wholly legal but ethically questionable gambling companies with total market saturation of their apps and services, and yet strikes down players transacting with those very same. Because as much as gambling and sport are intertwined at the nervous system in this country, gambling and sport just don't mix. So maybe have a look into the AFL's own relationship with Vice, and maybe South African cricket too, before you grab your wig and gavel. Just a thought.